There are few films that gain a cult following after release, and it seems the harder they fall, the more people love the underdog. None of this could be truer with a film like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which after performing at the box office on first released, gained a massive cult following in the years to come. I remember watching this film when it came out, and I always have fond memories of the style and just how different this film was to other Disney films. And yet to this day, when asked of my thoughts on the film, it always has the same response. This film is average at best, and yet I always find myself enjoying it and coming back to it. How does a film with a mediocre score become such a classic? Hi there, it's me, the Average Critic, and make sure to like and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a single video, and let's talk about Atlantis: The Lost Empire, making a cult classic. So Atlantis: The Lost Empire came out in 2001 and was a massive difference to Disney's usual lineup of films. The film is seen as the cousin of Treasure Planet, as both of these films are very similar, coming from around the same time, having similar animation style, story beats, and being infinitely just as awesome. Also, you can check out my Treasure Planet video right here in the top corner. But yes, Atlantis isn't a musical, it doesn't have much of a love story at the front of it, and is generally much more adult than most Disney films. That's where this film really shines, is its maturity. Even today, Disney aren't known for doing very mature films, as that's where something like Pixar tend to shine. Modern films like Frozen still have the same formula as some of the first Disney films ever made. Atlantis doesn't even have the clear-cut comedy sidekick to make this film more appealing to children. The closest we get to this character is Mole, but he only really has two big scenes where he shows the humour. And even then, it's not as obvious as, say, Olaf from Frozen or Mushu in Mulan. And that goes for the rest of the characters. Everything is played very straight, where the humour comes out of character, not from saying something funny. I know Vinny gets a lot of love for his dry lines of dialogue, but the scene that got me laughing the most was when Sweet gave Milo a checkup. The fast-paced sense of dialogue of a passive conversation you get when visiting the doctor is perfect and works incredibly well because of Sweet's profession. Speaking of fast pace, this film doesn't slow down for a second. It doesn't waste a second of introducing characters and getting the film onto its adventure, allowing for a real sense of adventure. It can feel too quick sometimes, but you can tell Disney really wanted to get to the root of where this film was, having lots of fun with a big cast of characters and an adventure where you can tell they just had lots of fun making it. The characters are definitely what make this film worth watching, as every character feels individual and tiny details that creep through. Every character does feel like an extension of a slight stereotype, but with all the fun and entertaining reasons. Small brilliant details, how the two black characters Sweets and Audrey generally stick close together because of the time period. They would bond over their troubles of being a person of colour. Vinny and Mole, being French and Italian, having quite similar cultures, also stick together, and of course Rourke and Helga, being the two with the most military background, they go together as well. Everyone had someone, making Milo feel more like the outsider of the group. All of these characters have a shining moment which really make the world feel lived in further expanding the world and making the world feel more mature. This added a level of maturity and is extended into the characters. With the exception of Mole, kids aren't drawn to any particular character because none of them feel like copy and pasted versions we see in other films. They feel real, they act real. Hell, if Disney hurry up and make a live action version, they will be real. Even Milo is like no other lead character we've ever seen. He's small, extremely thin, wears glasses, dresses kinda weird, and is incredibly bad at social interactions. In what way is this an interesting character for a lead movie? And yet, for an adult, it's extremely refreshing to see a real character in an animated movie. Despite this film taking inspiration from Raiders of the Lost Ark, we all know academic treasure hunters don't look like this. The film also has some strong themes of anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism, which is a huge reason for this film receiving the love it got. For me, I don't know enough to mention this topic, however I recommend watching Generations Film's video, The Darkest Disney Movie Nobody Talks About, as he goes well into depth in this topic. However, it does segue into this film's biggest flaw and yet most impressive character, which is Commander Rourke. This character is awesome compared to other Disney villains because he isn't really a villain, at least in the traditional sense. He isn't a mustache-twirling villain with roots of world domination, and up until the last act of the movie, he isn't really seen as a villain. It is implied throughout the movie that Rourke has ulterior motives, but isn't as obvious as other Disney twist villains. Rourke argues the point for his own greed with a sense of of charisma. Even though you don't agree with his actions, Rourke backs up everything he does with the points of fairness. He mentions artifacts in the museum are all technically stolen, and even offers Milo to be at his side. He does so without even raising his voice. This is why Rourke is more than just a villain. He is a character with flaws, desires, and personality. Everything down to him saying P.T. Barnum was right, which is him referring to his quote on "there's a sucker born every minute," is a brilliant use of character building for him to establish himself. He actually cares for his crew, up until the end, that is, but he still has a sense of respect. I mean, you don't root for the villain, but respect where respect is due. Disney, in my opinion, haven't done character development in a movie to this standard in a very long time. Characters usually being a result of being based off a fairy tale or where the story is at the center rather than the characters. That's not saying those films aren't great, but Atlantis takes a very mature approach to everything. It's about characters, specifically these characters. We don't even get to explore much Atlantis has to offer as a place, or even get to stop much to take in its wonder. Instead, the film chooses to focus on its characters and the character's arc. There is a reason this film has been in high regard to have a Disney live-action remake, as you could make a shot-for-shot remake in live-action and it would still be awesome. I mean, as a style, of course, as the style of this movie is incredibly unique. Taking inspiration from Jules Verne and 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, the world has a wonderful bleak setting which somehow looks pretty. But as much as this film does a lot of things right, it does feel held back and doesn't have the emotional weight that other Disney franchises have. Milo, despite being a refreshing lead, doesn't offer much weight to his character. It's all there, but you keep asking yourself for more emotion, more stakes, and more wonder considering the world they live. This film is set in a great time in history, and you want to see more of it. I spoke about this film's fast-paced narrative being a good thing, and it is, but sometimes you would just like it to slow down and allow the audience to take it all in. But despite that, you can tell this was a conscious decision to keep the film from becoming stale. I would have liked this film to be much longer, but considering the film's budget and style, much like Treasure Planet, they wanted the film to get in, make its money, and move to the side to make way for other Disney projects. And considering Disney's musical winning formula, you can see why. You yearn for this film to become something more. Every character has a great scene, but you want more. The character who truly steals the show is Rourke, but everyone just feels small compared to him. Everything was perfect, and you can really feel the weight the filmmakers had from Disney to make this film and stopping it from reaching the potential it had inside. But with that potential comes a cult following of people who saw more and allowed imaginations to run wild. Atlantis: The Lost Empire tells us to be different, to tell a different story, and not just make films just for money, but to make films because it's fun. And Atlantis is nothing if not tons and tons of fun. So after all that, it gets my professional rating of 7 out of 10, but scores much higher on my personal rating of 8 out of 10. As despite its flaws, this film can live rent-free in my head forever. So thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a comment on your favorite moments on Atlantis, and make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell as I dish out weekly content on all things animated. You can also catch me on all my platforms as well, but thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.